Not yet. What's a scribe to you, Ed?
We were talking about Mesopotamian scribes where writing was developed. In Uruk, 3200 BC, cuneiform, and it consists of little triangular marks on pieces of clay, damp clay, and then it dried and it stayed the same. The really important records were fired like pottery in a kiln. A lot of the lesser ones weren't, but unless some disaster happened, they last forever. And then sometimes when palaces were burned, a lot of times in Nineveh, the cuneiform tablets were baked in the fire and became totally permanent. And so the point was that more so, after 5,000 years, we have basically clay tablets with writing that can be read by people who understand those languages. And it's lasted 5,000 years, and the technologies that we're using currently to store information is not going to be as durable for a number of reasons. They'll become obsolete. The materials are degradable, and unless you keep reinventing, and not reinventing, but re-recording. If you keep re-recording things.
What do you think about The Matrix?
The Matrix? You mean the movie?
No, I'm talking about, like the number two, in technology, two, how everything is the number two.
You mean zeros or ones, and it's two? What? No, I'm not sure what you're talking about. The Matrix and everything's in twos.
Yeah, the Matrix has all the information, and what I'm trying to say is that
this sounds like special information.
Like the background information on a laptop or on a computer, or what you're talking about technology, is numbers.
Yeah, right.
And they call
zeros and ones. It's a binary system.
Right.
Everything is either one or the other.
Right.
So what are you saying?
That won't last forever? That's not...
No. That's just the way we're doing it now.
Mm-hmm.
No, as a matter of fact, there's all kinds of philosophical, in my mind, reasons why that exists and why it's so important and why it's going to go away.
What do you think is going to replace it? How's information going to be archived?
Well, I think that in the distant future, or maybe not, maybe it's going to come before we realize it, because this is a period of the convergence of knowledge and information and awareness. So it seems like what will happen, the technology that we have is a reflection of capacities that we have inside of ourselves. So that we invented the telephone so we could find out what people at a distance were up to and communicate with them, and television so we could see things all over, and the internet, kind of convergence of a lot of different technologies and made interactive. So
and cell phone?
The cell phone, well, that's another step, Marshall McLuhan, the wheel is an extension of the legs, something like that.
Say that again?
Marshall McLuhan,
yeah,
an old timer. The wheel is an extension of the leg. So he was saying technologies are projections and extensions of ourselves. And then he analyzed the technology as to what it said about us. He called the media is the message. But so we are a very primitive and separated, alienated state of being, and our favorite form of communication takes a binary means of transport, which is materialistic. And in the future, people will think thoughts and know what each other is thinking. You can send a message without AT&T.
Telepathic?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
basically.
the triangles, so those are, in stone, that's old, old technology,
Oh, you mean cuneiform?
yeah.
I mean, well, it was kind of the beginning of writing, so that was the beginning of history and the beginning of the acceleration of technology. And perhaps if you study a lot of those cultures before and since, um, well, okay, so this is kind of opening up a bunch of subjects that might not sound intelligent unless you can really do the whole
Research.
idea. We'll do the whole idea justice of laying it out. But let us say by the time of writing and in the region where writing began, um, people had already for a couple of thousand years or several thousand years been building cities with big wall systems, and so they could protect themselves from the guy in the city next door with his big walls. And sometimes you could raid his city, sometimes he could raid yours successfully. Sometimes you'd get really angry at him, or you'd have a very possessive king that would want to build an empire, and so he'd go over and steal everything from the city next door, the city across the region. And so what I'm saying is that by 3000 BC, the world was at a certain place where you had to devise to
You
communicate.
said what, 3000 BC?
3000 BC is when writing was invented, when cuneiform writing was invented. Now, there's reason to believe that there were writing systems a couple of 3,000 years before that
How about
in Europe and in Asia.
South America? Like
I-
with the Aztec, Toltec,
Oh, that's
Olmecs,
way
and
later.
Mayans?
That's all like 2000 AD. I mean 2000. That's all at AD 1 and on.
Okay.
I mean the Olmecs go back some, and I remember I had an article in National Geographic that they were doing excavations in the city, or actually it wasn't a big city. It was a little Mayan town. They claimed it was the oldest Mayan ruins because I think it went back to 2400 BC, which people would say, no, the Mayans didn't exist, but they had Mayan glyphs and Mayan artwork and sacrificial bones and all of that, and it was it evolved all the way up through the classical Mayan periods. And I have to find out what the name of that was, but even then, even with the Olmecs, even with Caracol down in South America, which goes back to 4000 BC, pyramid building, even those nations were, well, Caracol isn't, that's time of the pyramids and before, but the Mesopotamian cultures, they go back to 6000 BC. So they had built all these city-states, and by 3000 BC, they invented writing because they had big cities with commerce and a lot of business. They had to keep records.
So, I guess it was what inspired having a scribe. I mean, it's interesting, isn't it?
To keep records.
Yeah, to keep records.
To keep record keeping. I mean, that's what you go through.
And they had artists too. I'm sure, even though in that environment, there were artists that were illustrating, right, as well as writers who were scribing.
Yeah, and I think, and this gets back to your original question about that I consider myself a scribe because I write on my paintings, and that is, if you look at a lot of the Assyrian artwork, those great big bulls and all of the wall reliefs and everything, and well, all of Mesopotamian artwork, you'll have a statue, and then it'll have cuneiform chiseled into it, all that explains, I showed you. No, I didn't show you. I didn't show you the image of the Tower of Babel, the tablet from that has a picture, a architectural rendering of the Tower of Babel, and it has a portrait of Nebuchadnezzar standing beside it. It has a floor plan of the temple at the top, and on that tablet with all that illustration, it has a cuneiform text written into and across the images. And that's a big part of Egyptian art, of course, and all the tombs and they put the artwork with words. And I was fascinated by medieval illustrated manuscripts where half the page would be some curly Q dragon or something, and then a bunch of words. So I always feel at liberty to do that whenever I have something to say that doesn't just come across in the image.
So we're talking to a modern day scribe.
Well, I guess you could call it that.
I think you're a modern day scribe, and your name is Ed Moody.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, Ed Moody, thank you.
All right.
You always got some interesting information. You're
more,
like a philosopher.
I have more interesting information than that.
You what?
I said I have more interesting information than that.
I know you do. We're just touching on the tip of the iceberg. All right, I'm going to cut this off. Thank you.
Okay.